Alright, so here's how you can factor a polynomial expression using synthetic division. So here's the example we're going to do, x to the third minus x squared minus 10x minus 8. We're going to factor this, and since we can see this is a third degree polynomial, we're going to expect that we're going to have 3 different factors that we can break it down into. And one thing we're going to find is that the second number in these, that's the constant, they should all multiply up to give us this constant -8. So to do this synthetic division, we want to start by identifying some possibilities for these factors. We have to come up with a list of possibilities and then test them out, because otherwise we don't really have anywhere to start. So to figure out our possible divisors, they have to be factors of -8, because these 3 numbers will have to multiply up to this constant. So whenever you do this type of problem, you find your constant and list out the factors. So in this case, we got -8. Factors would be 1, 2, 4, and 8, but they could be positive or negative, so we'll put plus minus. So your possible divisors, you could have, so far potentially, we could have x plus 1, x minus 1, x plus 2, etc. So let's try testing one out. So let's see if we, let's check x minus 2, because that's one of our possible suspects here. Now to check it out, to see if that's a factor, we can use something called the remainder theorem. The remainder theorem states that if you divide and get a remainder of 0, then the divisor is a factor of the dividend. So maybe that sounds complicated, but it's just stating if you were to do 12 divided by 3, for example, and you get 4 for your answer, there's no remainder on that 4, then we can conclude that 3 is a factor of 12. 3 is a factor of 12. So if we want to figure out if, for example, if we want to check out if x minus 2 is a factor of this expression, we can just divide and check and see, is the remainder 0 or do we have some other remainder? So we can set up this synthetic division. So basically with our synthetic division, we're doing x to the third minus x squared minus 10x minus 8. So this long third degree polynomial here, and we're dividing it by x minus 2. X minus 2. And then is our remainder equal to 0? So we're going to check and see if that works out for us. So if we're dividing by x minus 2, we set up our synthetic division. We put the 0 of the divisor on the outside, which means we're going to put a positive 2. And then we line up our coefficients, 1, -1, -10, -8. And then we work out our synthetic division. So let's see, when we put this in here, we work it out. Okay, -24. Oh, look at that remainder. That is not 0. Our remainder is not 0. So that tells us we were not successful. X minus 2 is not a factor. So that just means we have to keep trying. So we could try another one. We could try x plus 2, see if that works. So that'll be set up just the same way, except we want the 0 of x plus 2, so we're going to have a minus 2 on the outside of our synthetic division. We're going to try this out and see if we can get that remainder of 0 this time. So we set that up, bring it down. And then now this time when we work that out, oh, look at this one. Now we got 0. That's what we were waiting for. So we can now conclude that x plus 2 is a factor of our original function. So then from here, we can see what do we have left when we divided that x plus 2 out. So let's see, this would be our constant, this would be our x, this would be our x squared. So what we have is x squared minus 3x minus 4. So that times x plus 2 is equal to our original polynomial. I'll just call it f of x so I don't have to write it again. We'll say that's equal to f of x. So now if we want to factor this out the rest of the way, you could keep on trying different numbers, but at this phase, if you see you have a quadratic right here, these quadratics are real easy to factor. We can do those quadratics just by factoring in the box, which you guys have learned. Or since we have a coefficient of 1 right here, we can real quick just look for two numbers that multiply to -4 and add to -3. And that's going to be -4 and +1. You can FOIL it out and check if you want, but that's what you're going to get. So we now have this fully factored. And then this is your answer.